What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video or any of my videos, make sure you hit the like button when you get done watching. And if you're new around here or you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it. This episode and every episode going forward is powered by Omerta Mia. Omerta Mia Clothing, the best in Mafia-inspired clothing, hats, gear, mugs, and artwork. Some of the coolest mob stuff you can find. If you've seen this shirt, a lot of people have seen this running around. Check out Lord Willin throwing up the Stop Glorifying Rat shirt. You can find it exclusively at omertamia.com. Go show some love to my boys Mick and Chris over at Omerta Mia. And if you use our promo code SITDOWN20, you're going to get 20% off your entire order. So go check out omertamia.com. That's omertamia.com. Code SITDOWN20 at checkout for 20% off. Okay, let's get into another mob topic today. And we've got a tough one to talk about. We are going to take a look at something that I had been wanting to talk about, and we're going to finally get into it. Over the years and over the centuries that the mob has been around, there has been gallons and gallons and gallons of blood spilled by the mafia, many of which are just people that were in the life that either had to go or wars or whatever. But what about the people that weren't connected to the mafia? What about the innocent citizens that died at the hands of not playing ball or being at the wrong place at the wrong time? We can't get to every one of the cases, but today we're going to take a quick look back at some of the people that died at the hands of the mafia, and every one of them died innocently. I'll do at some point another part 2 where we'll go through other ones. I can't get to all of them in one video, but let's take a look back and remember some of the victims that died at the hands of the mafia. I want to say before we get into it, and I'll say it at the end, may all of these people that we talk about today that died this way, may they rest in peace. On Christmas Day, 1986, Nicky Guido was excited. It was Christmas, and he had just bought a new car, and he wanted to show it off to his family. He took his father out in front of his Park Slope home and showed off his new red snazzy sports car. Sadly, though, the Guido family would never be the same. At that night, as he sat inside his car, 2 gunmen ran up and shot him multiple times. The family wondered who on earth would kill Nicky Guido. He was a telephone installer who enjoyed working and was a good kid by all accounts. He wasn't connected to anything negative. And the family wondered, what the hell just happened? Years later, these 2 lunatics, Stephen Caracapo on the left and Louis Eppolito on the right, would be indicted in a massive corruption case, which would come down as one of the largest corruption cases in the history of American policing. The world would find out that these 2 cops were actually moonlighting as mob hitman for Lucchese lunatic boss Anthony Gaspipe Castro. Now, in 1986, earlier that year, there was an attempted hit on Castro's life. He wanted retribution. He got one of the hitters, an individual called James Hidell, who was also involved with being abducted by the mafia cops and brought to Castro. But Castro needed to tie up another loose end. Nicky Guido, an individual that he had heard, took a shot at him, who was a Gambino associate. So he went to his cop mob pals and asked them to get some info on Nicky Guido. Where can I find him? Bogus information would result, and they would target the wrong Nicky Guido. This Nicky Guido, as I said, was a mid-20-somethings telephone installer with nothing to do with the mob. The actual Nicky Guido was actually hiding in Pennsylvania after he heard that Castro was looking for him. Nicholas Guido died at the scene and was 26 years old. His family subsequently sued the state and federal government and walked away with a settlement. Their life will never be the same. May Nicky Guido rest in peace and his memory be a blessing to his family and anyone that knew him. William Arenwald was a prosecutor for the United States government. He had been involved a little bit in some of the mob cases, including the commission case, but the chief prosecutor in that, as we know, was Rudolph Giuliani. Now, boss Carmine Persico had received subversive information that William Arenwald, who was then prosecutor, was, quote, embarrassing the family by talking negatively about the snake. From jail in 1987, the snake would offer to kill and have those two killed, Giuliani and Arenwald. He would call on Colombo family hitman and alleged murderer Joe Waverly Cacace. He basically told Cacace, I need Giuliani and Arenwald to go. As we know, Giuliani was never killed. He's still around. Cacace would go to two low-level hitmen, in Rico and Vincent Carini, and asked them to carry out the hit on Arenwald. This was a big piece of work. They were killing a sitting U.S. attorney. The problem was, in 1987, they found the wrong Arenwald. I was unable to locate a picture, but the father of William Arenwald, George Arenwald, was killed after he was shot multiple times in a Queens laundromat. William Arenwald had to face the fact that pathetic nonsense information got his father killed, and the mob was gunning for him. George Arenwald died at the scene. He was 78 years old. Another person caught up in a case of mistaken identity over something bullshit. At the end of the day, Arenwald never actually talked about Carmine Persico. It was just a seething snake trying to get retribution for nonsense. To this day, no one has been charged with the murder of George Arenwald. Joe Waverly Cacace would actually be indicted for the murder alongside many others. But as we know, he is on the street and was never actually convicted for any of them. At the time of his death, George Arenwald was 78 years old. May he rest in peace. William Arenwald would pass away in the late 2020 or in early 2020 from natural causes. May both Arenwalds rest in peace. On August 5th, 1977, 16-year-old Alan Kaiser had just chopped his girlfriend off at her home in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He walked home, is said to be a fan of art, Boy Scout, and according to his family, great kid, was on top of the world. He was happy. He had a girlfriend. He was in Boy Scouts. He enjoyed his life. Unfortunately, on that day, he ran into the wrong two people. Accosting him were this scumbag, Sammy the Bull Gravano, and a contemporary, Louis Melito. Now, just days before, Gravano had been involved in a shootout involving bikers. He had mistaken Alan Kaiser as an attempted hitman. Now, years later, Gravano would actually talk about this murder after he was pressured by not only the family of Alan Kaiser, but commenters and viewers alike. Gravano would shift the blame, as usual, to someone else and blame Melito, who he said pulled the trigger and killed the kid. To this day, Sammy Gravano has offered no solace to the family who in memory mourn the loss of a young teenager. As usual, Gravano can't take consequence for his behavior. According to a woman called Joy Faraci, who was Alan Kaiser's sister, she would maintain that the FBI came to her door and told her family that, quote, Sammy Gravano killed her brother. To this day, Gravano has never taken responsibility for this and gallivants around YouTube making money. At the time of his death, Alan Kaiser was 16 years old. There was no evidence that he was ever involved in anything wrong, and the thought that he had a shotgun was ludicrous. He was walking home from his girlfriend's home and was unfairly and sickeningly killed. May he rest in peace. Jessamina Verde was 21 years old in 2004. She said she loved being Italian and enjoyed living in Naples. She was a family woman and enjoyed volunteering in her spare time when she got time off from a leather goods factory she worked at. At one point, she had a relationship with an individual called Gennaro Naterno. Now, Naterno was a low-level member of the Doloro clan of Naples. A little bit of a backstory. In northern Naples, there is an area known as Secondigliano. It's become portrayed in the show Gomorrah, and at one point, it was the largest open-air drug market on the continent of Europe. Much of Segundoleano and bordering Scampia was run by an individual called Paolo Deloro. Deloro had been boss for years and had created a huge open-air drug market that made millions per month. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he would go on the run and, assuming control of the family, went to his hot-headed son, Cosimo Deloro. Now, by all indications, Cosimo Deloro was a womanizer, a murderer, a hothead, and what he did was surrounded his trigger-happy friends and taking over the clan. There was an arena of people inside the clan that were not happy. They were older members that had allegiance to Cosimo's father, Paolo. They became disenchanted with his leadership and broke off in a rival faction known as the Sicilianisti. The Sicilianisti and the Camorra clan of Paolo Deloro's would go to war. It was the Sicilianisti against Cosimo's crew, and they would war in Scampia and Segundoleano for a long time. Enter back Gennaro Naturno, once boyfriend of Gelsomina Verde. They were looking for Naturno. They wanted him dead. He was a Sicilianisti. He was a rival and an enemy. They found out that he had dated Verde. And on November 21st, 2004, as she walked home on a private road in Segundoleano, she would be abducted. This individual, Ugo Di Lucia, would be the chief torturer. He would try to beat out and torture where they could find Naturno, and they felt that Gelsomina Verde knew right where they could find him. The problem was Verde and Naturno had broken up years before, and she hadn't had any contact with him. However, due to her loyalty and unadulterated devotion, she never gave up a word about her old boyfriend. They tortured her for hours, lit her on fire, and would ultimately shoot her in the head multiple times. Her charred body and car were found by police officials, and according to a book written by Roberto Saviano, most of them threw up at the sight of the charred body. People wondered who would be sickening enough to do this. Through dental records and other things, they would find out it was the 21-year-old beauty, Gelsomina Verde. As I said, she never gave up any information about her old boyfriend. The loyalty she showed had her killed. Ultimately, Ugo Di Lucia would be arrested and indicted and ultimately charged and sentenced for the murder of her and other people in Naples. He would be sentenced to life in prison. Cosimo Deloro would ultimately be arrested as well and is also serving a life sentence. We can look back on the death of Gelsomina Verde and say that in all of these, it is one of the most disturbing. Ultimately, after the death of Verde, the Italian government took notice. In the area, once they found out it was her, president of Campania, Antonio Bassolino, would send 300 armed police to the area, and ultimately the war would quell. Luckily, the Camorra shooting stopped, but it continues to ravage on in the area of Naples where it began. At the time of her death, Gelsomina Verde was 21 years old. May she rest in peace. In 1979, Dominic Raguchi was a college student, and he had just gotten a job to help support himself selling vacuums door to door. He was excited. The son of an Italian father and Puerto Rican mother, he was happy to just get out and make some money. Sadly, though, in 1979, he would get an assignment, which his next customer would turn out to be Roy DeMeo. And sadly for Dominic Raguchi, he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. During this time in the late 70s, DeMeo was paranoid, according to his son, Albert. Albert had mentioned that during this time, DeMeo's partner and surrogate son, Chris Rosenberg, set up a cocaine deal in South Florida with Cuban drug dealers. Rosenberg decided instead of paying them, he would take the drugs and kill them. Cuban drug lords were furious and wanted Rosenberg's head. DeMeo obviously realized he'd be come for as well. And also his boss, Paul Castellano, would find out about his behavior and likely off him as well. It was said by Albert DeMeo that he became reclusive and became paranoid. He would constantly look out the window and worry that the Cubans were going to come kill him. One day, Dominic Raguchi, and just trying to sell a vacuum, pulled up in the driveway. At that point, DeMeo went out, shot the car up, including Raguchi, over 20 times. Unfortunately, Dominic Raguchi was added to the long list of people killed by one of the biggest psychopaths in the history of Mafia. At the time of his death, Dominic Raguchi was 19 years old. May he rest in peace. We look at all these people and we think back to who they are and what they were, the memories that their families had at them. This has been a long time. Most of these people have been dead for a long time. We think about where and who Alan Kaiser could be, or where Semana Verde could be in her life. What about Dominic Raguchi? Arenwald was just trying to live out his golden years. We look at all these people. Nick Guido, where could he have been in his life? Unfortunately, all 5 of these people were killed by soulless killers. Sometimes in this channel, we glorify the Mafia, and it's not my mention. I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to tell a history of a soulless group of people that really just care about one thing. Well, 2 things, themselves and money. Ultimately, this is not a beautiful or portrayed profession we should look about kindly. These are bad people, and to say that these people don't hurt citizens is just wrong. In another part, we'll take a look at more. But I want to say one more time, may all the people that we talked about today that died at the hands of the Mafia rest in peace. We wonder where they'd be today. And if their families are still out there, I wish them peace. Hopefully their memories are a blessing to you. As always, I thank you for watching. And if you enjoy this video, as I said in all the videos, hit the subscribe. I appreciate it. Thanks as always, and we'll see you next time.